you're going to keep paying the minimum payment on all of them except that highest interest rate card. You're going to throw everything you got at that highest interest rate card. And so then when that card ultimately pays off, then you're going to take all of that payment and throw it at the next highest interest rate card.
Hi, and welcome to Beyond the Paycheck. I'm Paula Christine. So I know that people struggle to make financial decisions, and even though that I know about money, I still struggle sometimes to make the right decisions, and it's nice always to have someone to reach out to. So I've invited Yvonne Marsh to come in today and talk to us about making financial decisions and then how to build an emergency account, and do you save in your 401k, or do you pay off debt? All those things that get us all confused and we end up really doing nothing. So welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So briefly, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a CPA and a CFP, Certified Financial Planner, but I've really spent most of the last 10 years or so working with folks that are almost either getting ready to retire or retire. And so they've really been able to save and create the wealth, but then they're not sure what to do with it. And so, what I've really wanted to segue into is to say, well, how can I take what I've learned from my clients in the last decade of the right decisions they've made, the things they have done along the way, and sort of rewind the time to say, hey, if I could reach out to people that are younger in their career path and their life trajectory, and give them some tips, give them some ideas of, hey, here's some simple strategies you can do while you're younger, so that you can build the wealth, build the life that you want for yourself. So that's really where I've been focused on lately. And I've actually created a new online platform called onedegreewealth.com. That's an online financial educational resource where I'm just blogging and got some courses just helping people learn what to do and when to do it.
That's great. So let's go back to that one thing that I mentioned in the intro about the question is, okay, I've got debt, maybe I'm coming out of college and I have some debt, but yet I know that I'm supposed to be saving for retirement, but I have limited resources. So how do I decide, do I put all my money towards getting out of debt, but yet I know about compounding? What do I do?
Yeah, kind of what do you do first? So, I think there are so many competing demands on this finite paycheck that it can lead to sort of analysis paralysis. So I don't know what to do. So you kind of end up not doing anything.
Correct,
That's not
yeah.
uncommon at all. And so, to me, it's all about taking this sort of big thing and breaking it down into pieces, into steps, and really kind of creating a sequence of what's most important to do first. And so I have really what I kind of call the foundational 5 steps for anybody that's really not sure where to go first. If you have student loans, then my first step is to go enroll in that new SAVE program that's out now. And the 2 reasons why it's important to just jump in there and do that, it doesn't take long, is one is the minimum required payment, the way they're calculating it now is lower than it used to be under the other income-based repayment plans. And it's about to even get lower next July when they change how they're calculating it. So,
but your payment gets lower, but does it ever get paid off?
Well, here's the thing that's different about the SAVE plan is it used to be just this quagmire that if your required payment was so low that it wasn't even paying the interest just kept accruing and accruing. And so people were like, man, I owe more 10 years down the road than I did when I got out of college. And the SAVE plan fixes that. And this is why people need to run to the SAVE program, because it says, hey, if your new income-based required payment doesn't at least cover the interest, then the government forgives that incremental interest. It just goes away. And so it actually gives you a chance. Yeah, right? It's huge. It gives you a chance to actually whittle down this debt. And then it does have the same loan forgiveness features to it. And so, in my mind, when we are saying, I have finite resources, how can I best allocate them? To take advantage of the SAVE program, because it is lowering the amount of required payment the interest now is being forgiven if you don't have the payment that covers the interest. And then it still has a loan forgiveness feature at the end of the time period. So in my mind, like set that as low as you can and forget it. Move on to other financial priorities.
Is that based on your income?
Yes,
Okay.
that is what they call an income-based repayment program. And so it's based on your income and it's based on the number of people in your household. And so they're making two adjustments to it. One is looking at how much, let's see, what do I want to say? The percentage over the federal poverty line that they're raising the threshold of giving you more discretionary income before they're saying, okay, you've got to start paying this loan back. So I'll just not get in the weeds too much, only just to say it's more generous how they're doing the calculation that translates into a lower required payment. And again, you're not shooting yourself in the foot anymore by the interest is no longer going to just build and build and build and accrue. It's going to be forgiven if your payment doesn't meet the monthly interest accrual. So in my mind, that was like, holy cow, that is a game changer when it comes to trying to decide what do I do about my student loan debt.
Okay, so that's great about the SAVE program, but so I can bring down my payment. So that does maybe give me an opportunity then to contribute to my retirement account.
Right. And so, in this sort of foundational 5 steps that I think of when people come to me are like, where do I start? So, of course, that was just step 1. If you don't have student loan, of course, skip that one. But if you do, think about the SAVE program. That's going to lower that as much as you can so you can move to the next step. And the next step is you've got to have some sort of emergency fund. And so, I'm going to say start with $1,000 emergency fund as your next foundational step along the journey of creating some financial security for yourself. It's super important to have that emergency fund because it's going to keep you out of debt or keep you out of more debt if you're in debt because we do know, right? Life happens.
Most emergencies.
I just had a flat tire. Right. And it was $600 or some crazy thing for tires, like that stuff happens. And so when we have that emergency fund, it keeps us from hitting our credit cards. And even more so, too, I think there's a peace of mind to it that, hey, I do have that money in the bank for the what ifs. And to me, financial decisions, it's a confidence booster. The more good decisions you make, the more you build off of that to make even better and better decisions. And so that self-confidence that comes from like, hey, I have accumulated this emergency fund and I feel good about it. And so then after you have that emergency fund, then in my mind, the next step is to look at your 401k plan at work. And if you are eligible for a 401k plan and it has an employer match, then that's where I would go next and be saving into your 401k to the extent of that employer match. There's some debate, and you'll probably speak to this too in financial circles of like, well, should you do that first or should you pay off high interest rate credit card first? Like, which is it? And, in my mind, and,
that's tough.
I just, right, it's tough. And, where I've come down is the employer match, it's free money. And as time goes and you don't take advantage to it, it's gone. It's up in smoke. You can't get it back. And if we think about, say the employer's like, hey, I'll give you 50 cents for every dollar you put in. That's a 50% rate of return right off the bat.
Yeah.
If it's a dollar for dollar match, it's 100% return. Like no credit cards, cost that much. And so again, that's where I think about go ahead and capture that employer match to the extent that you can, I guess I'll say, before you move into then the next foundational step. And that's now let's tackle your high interest rate credit card. So again, you've got your student loan fixed, you've got your emergency fund, the $1,000 to just get you going. You've got a little bit of retirement working with the employer match, and now we're going to tackle that high interest rate credit card. And I'm a fan because I like math and numbers of using the avalanche method, which I know you're familiar with. But in a nutshell, it's just saying, hey, take your credit cards, look at the interest rate you're being charged, they call it the APR, annual percentage rate, on your statements, and order them from highest interest rate card to lowest interest rate card. you're going to keep paying the minimum payment on all of them except that highest interest rate card. You're going to throw everything you got at that highest interest rate card. And so then when that card ultimately pays off, then you're going to take all of that payment and throw it at the next highest interest rate card. And it creates this rolling, avalanching effect of, methodically paying off that high interest rate credit card debt the fastest. There is some debate about, well, the other method, the snowball method, where you choose the lowest balance card first, because you do get a psychological win quicker, right? That you pay off the lowest one and you're like, wow. But, to me, I think the idea of like, hey, let's just pay the least amount of interest we can to these credit card companies by using the avalanche method. There's other ways we can build in psychological wins without it being, I'm just going to pay more interest and use a less efficient way.
I always tell people, whatever works, whatever you're going to stick with, if it's the avalanche or the snowball, whatever you're going to stick with.
Yeah.
And that's really all that matters. So I do prefer the avalanche method myself, but if the snowball works for you,
right? As long as you're getting it paid off.
Just get it paid off.
That's right.
Get it paid off.
Yep, absolutely.
So, you were talking about educating young, and that's, both kind of the concepts that we both have. But, and we hope that kids don't get into debt and all of that stuff. But what about that? I run into it. I'm sure you have that, 55-year-old single woman who is in debt, really didn't save, and now you're trying to get her to do all those things and being able to retire. I mean, I think those are some pretty tough, to be in a pretty tough situation. So what would you say to her?
Well, I have worked with some ladies over the years that do come to me in that situation. And honestly, sometimes they can be really hard conversations that it's like, this isn't going to get better. We've got to take some really intentional actions to fix this. And you've got to plan on working for as long as you possibly can. It's still a lot of the same strategies, the same steps, whether you're 25 or 55, but the urgency is much greater at 55 because, we just don't have time for money to build and wealth to accumulate like we do when you're 25. But, and I think it is, honestly, I'm looking at their income as much as I am their expenses and really saying, can you work more? Can you get another part-time job? That all that money could go toward paying down debt, ultimately towards savings more, and really taking a two-pronged approach of not just sort of the expense side of the equation, what can you cut? How can you use it most efficiently? But we got to really look hard at how can you create extra income that could really turn this ship around. And then being realistic of like Social Security is going to be your bedrock of your guaranteed lifetime income when you retire. And so you need to work until you're 70, plan on it, assuming your health holds out, so that Social Security benefit grows to its maximum. Because we know for every year you wait past your full retirement age, it grows 8% more guaranteed, and that's a great deal.
Yeah, that's a tough conversation. I've had those myself. It's just a really tough conversation. But it's really hard for me to have that conversation because I've been in that situation when I was in my 30s, recently divorced from my first husband, 2 children, trying to buy a house, trying to get all those things in my life back to what I would call normal, like they were prior to the divorce. And when my kids went to my ex's for his visitation, I was working. So I worked a full-time job and 2 part-time jobs just to get myself ahead. And you got to have that.
And that was hard, right? I bet that was right. It was hard. It's like that, but it was this intentional decision you made to like, I have to do this to right this ship, and push myself forward again. And those are really hard. And that's where, I think community can help us. It's finding, women, friends that have been through similar circumstances that can help be the cheerleader, because it can be a lonely time, I
And I
think.
also think the community comes into play too, as when maybe it's not the 55-year-old, but it's that 30-year-old who has two young children and, can't take on a second job because, she has no daycare, because the
Hmm.
childcare in this country is just massively screwed up. So there's
Yep.
nothing open on the weekends or in the evenings. So I think having that strong community behind you so that you have the help that, maybe you're swapping days with another mother or stuff. I enjoyed talking to Yvonne so much that we went way over our allotted time for my podcast. So we're going to split this episode in two. So we're going to talk with Yvonne again next week. So stay tuned for part 2.